do?
That's Dean's seat.
This one is?
Dean sits next to Terry.
It doesn't. No.
Where's Dean sitting?
Are you
He
making?
sits right there.
Yeah, right. That's
We're going to go. I'd like to call this meeting to order, a regular meeting of the Village Board on Monday, August 7th at 7 p.m. in the Germantown Village Hall Boardroom and also accessed via WebEx. This meeting has been given public notice in accordance with sections 19.83 and 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes in such form that will apprise the general public and news media of subject matter that is intended for consideration and action. Roll call shows all village board members present, because I've seen them, yet they're all up at the dais at this time. Oh, Rick is excused. I'm sorry. Thank you for reminding me. Yes, trustee Rick Miller is absent and excused. At this time, I'll ask us all to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next item is President's Report. Just a couple things to report tonight. I have been involved in a couple meetings that have been happening at the county executive's invitation. He has invited all the leaders of the boards or the village boards or any of the committees that manage the different communities around Washington County. And the purpose of that is to look for ways to share the revenue from the sales tax as part of a response to the referendum. Part of the discussions have involved about single payment out to the different communities, and the response and answer to that question is the county board doesn't feel that they would want to write a check to all the different communities to help pay for part of that sales tax revenue sharing, but they are more willing to look at ways to share services. and some of the different ways that they can share services. I've asked our own village staff to look at directly three of them. One of them would be the sharing of dispatch services, which two communities have also moved towards. The sharing of GIS updates services, which they do, and have a couple people on their staff that are considered top-level GIS input and managers of the GIS system. And the third way that I've asked staff to look at it is with, remind me of the third way. I'm having a senior moment.
GIS, we have dispatch, IT services.
IT services. They do have IT staff that they're looking to add to, and they could help us out with IT services too. So as Steve is communicating with the county executive and his team, he's also looking at what that would help offset with our 2024 budget if we look at each and one of those. My understanding is as we would take those services on and with the new state changes to the law, it used to be if we changed our dispatch service or went to a countywide dispatch, we would have to remove that amount of what it would take from us or savings from us, and we'd have to take that out of our levy. The new laws have changed some of that, and I'm sure there's a very long-winded explanation that Brian could give us as to how that is involved, but it's not important at this time, and I don't mean it as an insult. It's not important at this time. Right now, it's more of a directive of gathering that information, talking with staff at the county level, and seeing what it would take to do that and what its schedule would be going forward. So as more information is brought forward, it will be shared with us either at a committee level or at the board level. Trustee Myers.
Thank you, Mr. President. Actually, Kewaskum is in the process of service right now. It will cost them $60,000 a year. Hartford is usually the dispatch also at this time.
That's correct. Kewaskum has cut a contract with them, but if we would look at that service, we wouldn't look at it as a pay for because we are already paying for it. And it would be more as part of the, it would be done under the understanding of shared revenue. And that would be the lead of it, because if they're going to be moving in the direction of what the result was of the referendum, they want people to know that they are doing this as a result of what's considered shared revenue of the sales taxes. That's all I have for President's report. So we can go on to next item, which is announcements of forthcoming events of public interest, committee and department reports, starting with committee chairs with Trustee Kaminsky.
Public Works will meet in this room on Wednesday, September 6th at 5:30 PM.
Thank you. Trustee Rick Miller is not here. The next GGF meeting is before the next village board meeting on the
2 weeks from tonight.
and that's at 6 o'clock. All right. Trustee Hudson.
Public Safety will meet in this room September 6th at 6:30 PM.
Thank you. Does anyone else have anything else they'd like to bring forward for announcements of forthcoming events of public interest, committee or department reports? Trustee Pieper.
The Neighbors Night Out, I just wanted to say that the police department and the fire department did such a fabulous job. I thank you very much. My kids look forward to that every single year. If we missed it, oh, they would have never let me live it down. It is probably one of their funnest nights of the year. You guys did so great. It is so fun to see all the residents and how many people, the numbers just continue to grow and grow every year. So I just wanted to say, great job, fire department, police department, and all the community that put time and effort into it.
Since they've moved it out to Fireman's Park, it seems to have the room to expand and grow, which it's been successfully doing over the last couple of years. So, Chief, thank all your staff and the fire department. If anybody's here or watching, please thank all their staff as well as of the planning and preparation that it takes to put that event on. Anything else for announcements of forthcoming events of public interest, committee or department reports? If not, then we can go to citizen input, public appearance. Anyone that is within our audience or joining us via WebEx that would like to participate in citizen input or public appearance, you're welcome to do so at this time. All I would ask is if you're here to come to the podium and state your name and your address for the record. And if you're joining us via WebEx, just make your wishes known so that the moderator can can bring you forward. But if there's anyone in our audience at this time, you're welcome to come to the podium in the center of the room and make your statements. Anyone wishing to come forward at this time?
Melanie Smythe, N140W179 Cedar Lane. Good evening. Just one thing for next year, perhaps the neighborhood night out could be posted on the website. I couldn't find anything about that. Or on our,
Still can't let the speakers don't fill out. So
oh, okay. Next year, perhaps there could be a notice on the website about the neighborhood's night out. I was looking for something about that just to know when it all started and couldn't find anything. Perhaps it was out there and I missed it. But we have, it would have been nice just to know. We just had the Public Safety Committee meeting, and two significant topics were brought up: some poor behavior of visitors to our village in the Kinderberg Park, and the need for additional public safety personnel. And on the budget side of finding money for the personnel, we have asked repeatedly for details about the numbers, the finances of any possible available money. The presentation that was provided tonight by the village administrator was the same as the last few times, with no additional information, no additional money. So or review of the money. So I'm asking for that to be provided to us, and perhaps that's something that will happen at the COW meetings, the details, so that it could be shifted around and looked at. I would like to give you some information about a county meeting where the IT manager, and this was within the last 3 months, said that was talking about bringing Kewaskum onto their system, and admitted in the meeting that if a larger village like Germantown or another one decided they wanted to do that, they would not be able to accommodate it because their system needs to be updated. I think that was July. It might have been the June meeting at the village, I mean, not the village, the county board. But you can look that up. They talked about it. Again, on the budget, knowing what the numbers are, if you remember looking back at the TID9 Eilers report about taxes going up, in the course of the next 3 years, taxes are going to be going up. I'm not sure how successful a referendum is going to be, but it's worth a shot. I mean, if that's the only option that we have, or part of the option, then we probably should look at that. So I welcome the information that was discussed earlier at the public safety, but it needs to be in detail. It can't just be words on a paper. It needs to have some substance to it. Thanks. Oh, the last thing is on your CIP, wouldn't it be good to have the cost of the 50% of the right-of-way and things like that for the utility extension? I think we should have all costs. And since you're about to release people to go out and negotiate costs of the right-of-way, we should at least know what the budgeted amount is. At least, I don't know, 100,000 an acre. And there's 11 plus acres when you look at the right-of-way information, something like that.
It's not a budget item.
It's not, where is that coming from then?
It's coming from Richfield. That's 50% and 50% from us once it's been derived as to what that number is.
Okay, and where from us is it coming?
It would either come from the possibility of the 2 TIF districts, or at the cost of perhaps a bonding or something else. But all those items are being researched, and that information will come forward as it's being achieved. Right now, it's all within the research designation, so we don't have numbers because it would be a guess.
Yeah, an educated guess. We can't afford any more TIFs.
No, ma'am. What it would be is from the existing TIFs 7 and 8.
8. 8's the one that we'd like to release early, though.
And with projections from Ayers, we would see what the impact of what that might be. But until we have a number, we really don't have those financials.
Right. We don't have a lot of financials in this village, it seems.
Well,
Thanks.
you're putting, again, the cart before the horse in the process, and understanding the process and where we are in it is important to know. And then at what time of that process, the financials are more of a reality and something that can be discussed rather than guessed.
Okay, that's, I mean, estimates are educated guesses, and it helps for planning purposes when you put together budgets. My opinion.
Mhm.
Thanks.
Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that wishes to come forward at this time for citizen input or public appearance?
Good evening, Scott FLW 159 N10514 Old Farm Road, Germantown. 4 or 5 points tonight. First of all, I don't know why people reach out to me. Sometimes they do. Channel 25 does still not work consistently. People are saying that it's knocked offline. It's coming back on. The ones that don't have upgraded technology, we have a few of those in the village. Just an FYI, of course, anything gets my attention would be any words eminent domain. That always gets my attention. But I don't wait to get resources. I reach out to people that I have a network with and talk to some people about it and said, yes, the village has a right to eminent domain anything they want. They do. And under the law, they go talk to the landowners. And if the landowners say no, then they reach out some sort of a fair market value assessment of their land, is what I was told. And then they can either challenge that amount you're paying them, or the eminent domain comes into place. And in the end, the village does have the right to pay them a fair market value and then take over that right of way. That's what I was told. If I'm wrong, then I'm sure we have an attorney that can comment on that. So just so everybody's aware, I also checked with a real estate agent, and 1 acre lots in Germantown without sewer and water are running between 100 and 130,000 apiece. So if we're looking to get 10 acres out, and people in Germantown are not just going to give their land up, we could be paying 100 to 130,000 an acre for that land. If it's 11 acres, you guys can do the math. We're on sale. We're on hook for half of that, right? So just let you know what that is. And these are real estate agents in Germantown that have worked in this area for 30 years. They would know the number. So just curious about that, because now I did find out, thanks to President Walter providing additional information, that we know where the money's coming from to pay our 50%. It's coming, well, we know some areas it could come from. Okay, I do have the floor here. This is citizen comment.
You're giving misinformation, I will correct.
Okay, so I'll leave that alone. Can I do that?
Yes,
Can I talk about the capital plan?
absolutely. You're free to talk
Okay.
about whatever you would like.
Okay, the 5-year capital plan, I gave you guys a handout, all right? This is from the UW Stevens Point. They have a Center for Land Use Education that I've been on many times. Very good information, comes from the university. I went to La Crosse, this is Stevens Point. And it tells you how to do capital budgeting the right way, okay? People may disagree with me that whatever they're presented as a capital budget is the kind of capital budget that you would hand into your employer, and it's not, okay? I understand, and we always say this was the initial thing. This tells you how to do it the right way. Where the funding sources are, where it comes from, a report card to put them in order of priority, not just throw 50 million or 40 million out there and say, hey, I hope it works out, we can get you what you want, okay? My concern is, as it always is budgets, all right? I am a budget person, all right? I am a financial person, and I want to know how we're going to pay for all this stuff. So I am sure forthcoming information is going to be detailed more than I've seen in the last 3 budget cycles. At least I hope it is. Thank you.
Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that wishes to come forward at this time for citizen input or public appearance? Is there anyone online?
Check here, there wasn't.
Okay. All right, if there's no one else that wishes to come forward, we can go on to the next item, which is consent agenda.
Approve consent agenda A through
Motion made and seconded to approve consent agenda items A through E. Is there any discussion on that motion to approve? Trustee Pieper?
I'd like to pull item D.
Item D, okay. Trustee Jan Miller.
As in Edward.
Okay. Other discussion? No other discussion? Then we'll do roll call vote for consent agenda items A, B, and C at this time.
Trustee Baum. Trustee Kaminsky. Trustee Hudson.
Aye.
Trustee Myers.
Aye.
Trustee Nyrider.
Aye.
Trustee Jan Miller.
Aye.
Trustee Pieper.
Aye.
President Walter.
And we'll start with consent agenda item D. Trustee Pieper.
I just didn't see an amount.
Scott, Aaron, answer that question? The voice over IP phones?
So that was.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was in the packet, under the, sorry, let me get there real fast.
Wasn't it 1,900 and the monthly cost of 1,933 and an annual of 23,200?
Something like that.
Page 33.
Aaron? Based on the bids?
Oh, right here, right.
I think that's actually wrong line item. So it's packet page. Actually, I can't tell you what package page it is because I don't have that view. But it's actually with Crescendo, which, if I'm reading the attachment right, is a monthly cost of $1,030 for an annual cost of $12,361, and it's a 5-year lease.
So it says for the 5 municipal buildings, but which buildings are they?
So it's for the library, for the fire department, for Village Hall, for the senior center, and for Public Works.
The new Public Works or the old?
New and old, yep. So we would start it in the old, and then we would transition the phones into the new building.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, it looks like I'm not seeing that the summary went on this. But there was a summary with it when it went to GGF that talked about the process that we went through. So we had a team of 5 different people who represented each one of the buildings. And so we looked at multiple options that were out there, and all 5 of us went through each demo and proposal that we received. We tested out a few phones to check and see which ones would work best with the village. And so in the end, this solution was the one that was chosen. I do apologize that that memo did not get onto this agenda or get into this packet. But that's what went before GGF when it was approved. And it showed also the prices that were given, and this was not the lowest, but one of the lower costing ones. But we thought it was very good quality and that it would work, especially since we're doing backup services for the new DPW building with US Cellular.
Trustee Pieper?
No.
Trustee Jan Miller?
Just a quick question. There are 2 different dates on that contract.
Yes, I see that. And
expiration is-
one's less too. So there was one for $1,000 and one for $757. So it would be the lower one because we were getting a deal. We were getting costs taken off for the installation.
But the dates I saw for the contract, one was, I'm going to say 6/30, and the other one was 7/31, and those are both
7/31.
expired. Are they going to give you the same deal?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I just want to make sure.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. We can't control dates of meetings.
Right.
Thanks.
I think they understand that.
Questions, concerns, motion?
One last question, and then I'll make a motion to approve. So we're not paying any one-time fees. We're just paying the monthly fee, correct?
Correct.
So, okay, we don't have to pay the $10,000 and then $757 each month. We're just paying $1,000.
Correct. It's only on a monthly cost. Yep.
I make a motion to approve new business item. Help me out here, D.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to approve? No discussion? Roll call vote.
Get there in one. Okay, trustee Baum, trustee Kaminsky, trustee Hudson,
Aye.
trustee Myers, trustee Nyrider,
Aye.
trustee Jan Miller,
Aye.
trustee Pieper, President Walter.
Aye. Next item on consent agenda, item E, award bid to Visu Sewer in an amount not to exceed $319,191.40 for the 2023 sanitary sewer lining SIP project. Trustee Jan Miller.
Is Tim here?
He is.
Could I ask you a couple of questions? I'm referring to the map that you included. Thank you very much. On this GIS map that has the route, I believe, that you're going to use to do the CIPP project. And I just wanted to understand, there's a red line. It kind of sort of looks like there's a green line, a dot, also with it adjoining. Am I looking at the right map? No.
No, push a button.
So,
Now it is.
Okay, so the green dots represent manholes.
oh,
The green lines represent sewer line segments. And what I did is I colored the line segments that we're going to be lining red.
okay. But are there, so my question is it a solid green line then? Are there sewer things there now?
Yes.
Sewer pipe from dot to dot.
Right.
Red dots is what we are lining.
So the sewer pipe already exists and we're going to reline it.
Right, we're going to put a new pipe within that pipe to make it monolithic and eliminate the joints.
Oh, and have you been having problems with those? I just wanted to know.
Not yet. And the reason we don't want to have problems with them is because there's a couple million gallons of water over those pipes. And if one of those pipes gets compromised, we're going to lose everything downstream to flooding.
So my follow-up question is, maybe it wouldn't be downstream, I don't think, but what about the pond off of Division where the bridge is?
If Old Farm Lift Station can't handle the flow, it goes to that pond.
Okay.
So yes, it would be a very nasty sanitary overflow.
Do we have to do a CIPP around the old farm? I mean, is there sewer pipe that needs to be reinforced with CIPP around old farm?
I'm not really understanding your question.
Well, we have sewer pipes there, right?
Correct.
In old farm.
Yes.
And none of them are compromised? Is that what you're saying?
No.
Okay.
But the goal is to eventually reline the system.
Yeah, as you find that the pipes are aging prematurely or they're aging normally and it's time to put a liner in because they're leaking or whatever, and grout no longer is a tool in the toolbox.
Right.
The lining is the next tool we use short of open cut and relay.
And those
Okay.
are determined through your yearly inspections.
Correct.
Wonderful. it is a big pond. I just wanted to ask the question.
We don't have any sanitary sewer running underneath the Jefferson Pond ditches.
Ah, okay,
All the sanitary lines are in Division Road
okay,
down the center line.
yeah,
And then Willowwood subdivision they're contained within the subdivision and come back out to Lilac Lane. So nothing is under the water
in that
in
area.
that area.
Thank you very much.
Would you like to entertain a motion, trustee Jan
Yes,
Miller?
I'd like to move that we approve item consent agenda E as in Edward.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the award to bid to Visu Sewer in an amount not to exceed $319,191.40 for the 2023 sanitary sewer lining project. Any further discussion on that motion to approve? No further discussion? We'll do a roll call vote, please.
Trustee Baum, trustee Kaminsky, trustee Hudson, trustee Myers, trustee Nyrider, trustee Jan Miller,
Aye.
trustee Pieper,
Aye.
President Walter.
Yeah, it takes care of all items under consent agenda, then taking us to unfinished business, starting with unfinished business. Item A, Eric and Ashley Evans at W130 North 11622 Harvest Ridge, Lot 1 in Harvest Hill Subdivision. Subdivision plat amendment to revise the Elm Lane access restriction to allow a driveway onto Elm Lane. There is a note in regards to an unfinished business, item A, which is at the request of the property owner, this item will be postponed to the August 21st, 2023 Village Board meeting. Does that require a motion by this body to make that move, or based on this entry into the agenda that is sufficient?
Either would be fine.
Board, it's up to you.
Motion to
Second.
And your motion is to postpone
August 20.
to the August 21st meeting for unfinished business, item A. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None opposed? Motion carries. Next item of unfinished business is financing and budgeting related to the Kinderberg Park Playground Project. Gil?
Okay. Thank you for having me. I'm respectfully requesting that the board allow me to roll over the $300,000 out of the building improvements account 40525708210 that was budgeted in 2023, roll it over to 2024, and also add the additional 111,000 being requested, that will be requested in the capital improvement plan for 2024, added a community splash pad and all-inclusive playground, so that we can complete the project of the $411,000 for the new playground at Kinderberg Park.
Motion to approve unfinished business B, 300,000 rollover to 2024, 111,000 also to 2024.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Trustee Pieper.
We all know my thoughts on this as of right now. I actually reached out to the previous Park and Recs director, and he doesn't even think this is a great idea, because when you do an all-inclusive playground, this is at the lower end of an all-inclusive playground. And I think if we are going to do an all-inclusive playground, we should do it right. And it's going to cost a lot more than just $100 and some $1,000. We're coming up on budget. And we all know we are $1.1 million in the hole as of right now. We have no money to be sparing anything right now. I think I'd be fine rolling it over so we could put that towards a really nice all-inclusive playground. But as far as giving more money, we don't even know where it's coming from. We know we're 1.1 in the hole. I think that should be taken up at committee of the whole.
Further discussion. Trustee Nyrider.
What was the, and I apologize, I don't have the minutes in front of me here, but what was the reason why we sent it back to you to come back to us again for another month?
Well, it was the cost of it. The board didn't want to, I was asking for the whole 400,000 for this year to proceed with the project. And the board did not want to give me the extra $100,000. So I was looking for a way to extend it over a 2-year period.
So, what you're saying then, Gil, is that you want to roll over 300,000 in
Yes,
order to get another 111,000 in the 24 budget for it.
Well, the 300,000 was approved
Correct.
for 2023, and then the additional 111,000 is being requested through the capital improvement plan for 2024.
Well, we're way over budget
It's borrowing.
from what, am I right? We're way over budget from what you originally thought when we did the budget last fall, or not?
Well, when I presented a $300,000 playground plan
Yep.
to the commission, and they asked me to look into getting another additional equipment to add to it. And that's where I came up with the 411,000.
The Park and Rec asked for additional
Yes, sir.
equipment? But why wasn't that done at the time of budget? When we were doing the 23 budget? That's what always bothers me is we put a number in the budget, and I know sometimes you're going to go over it, but then complete thinking and complete planning should have said, this is it, this is what we can afford. And I agree a little bit with Trustee Pieper here that, money is tight and is going to be extremely tight in next year's budget. And if I remember right, there was some discussion at last month's meeting, if this was even the right location for it within the park itself or that park, am I right?
Well, this is a replacement of the current playground that is already there.
Correct.
So, yes.
I guess I just see it as, yeah, there is a need to have playground equipment in parks. And we have to keep up, unfortunately, with the Joneses and the other communities, which I don't always agree with. But to me, it's a ton of money, especially now when we have a park where we heard numerous complaints about activities going on there. I wouldn't feel very comfortable right now until we get a handle on that of ever seeing anything additional new be put in there because of the threat of what may happen.
Well, all I can say is the issues that we're having in the park are being addressed and they are being corrected. And I personally have gone by the park. The complaints have come on the weekends. I've made it a point the last 3 weekends to go by there. And the measures we have taken are working. And there is less issues that are going on in the park. And we're continuing, when we're meeting, we're continuing looking at other more signage, different things that we're going to continue to work with. But I believe the police have stepped up their patrolling. I've talked to citizens and, there are still issues, but they are being addressed. And
What if we stayed with the 300,000 and said that was it? And I'm not saying that's what the board is saying, but what if we were to say that $300,000 is it? What would that give us? What would you have to, not have as part of it? I know we talked about the surface as being, the newer surface as being quite expensive. But if you were to take and roll with the 300,000, what would you lose by not having the extra 111?
well, you just have less equipment. I think that was the point of asking me to look at additional 100,000 for more equipment.
But it's something we can always add on to over the course of the years, correct?
We could,
I mean,
yes,
yes,
okay. There'd be plenty of space.
Yep.
That we could add more equipment if
I know it costs more. I know it's expensive to install it and to bring back, equipment, but again, I don't know, I have a problem with that whole amount. I really do.
Further discussion? Trustee Myers.
Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you also said you could take $30,000 out of a particular fund to reduce that amount. Am I correct or incorrect?
Well, I'm hoping so. I believe now it just depends on where we are with the deficit at the end of the year. If possible, yes, I had money left over from a project, but depending on where the budget is, the deficit, it may have to be used to help cover some of that cost. So I'm not sure where we'll be.
We wouldn't be doing that this year anyhow.
Oh, it would be if,
So
No.
so in other words, if the end of the year came by, and other money wasn't needed, that could actually reduce this amount going forward for 2024.
yes.
Isn't that not correct?
yes, about 33,000.
33, even more. Thank you, Cal.
Further discussion? Trustee Baum.
I'm okay with rolling the money over to next year. That's not the problem. I just think you're running a risk whether we approve the other $111,000. So if you want to move it over, and if we do have money, you can add pieces back on. If we have more money, you can add more pieces back on. It's up to you to run the risk, but I will approve the portion of it to roll it over, but I will not approve automatically saying another $111,000.
I have a question. The 111, you keep saying it's coming from capital improvement. It's borrowing, isn't it?
Yes, if the $111,000 is approved in the 2024 budget, would be part of the capital budget, and we would be borrowing for that next spring.
Okay, so it's not part of the regular general fund. It would be what it would ever be improved for capital projects or equipment within the borrowing portion of the budget. Trustee Kaminsky.
How old is the equipment again, right now, Gil?
It's approximately 20 years old.
Okay, so
It's
it's,
the oldest
Yeah.
equipment in the village.
okay,
Yeah.
and that's our premier park, so we have to do this. Okay. Knowing that we have to do this, I agree with trustee Baum. I have no problem rolling this over and hoping that you get your 111,000. I would definitely suggest when you go back to your rec committee, whenever that meeting is again, you bring up all this conversation that there's a good chance you might not get that. And what is their plan B? Do they still want to try to go with a minimally inclusive plan or put some really dynamite equipment in there instead from some other supplier? As I think that's what it's going to come down to. We know we have to replace it, but this may not be the time and place to try to be the all-inclusive playground, as trustee Pieper said, when we're only doing it halfway or less anyway. You know, so that would be my thought. I will also approve this and we'll roll the dice on 111,000.
Trustee Hudson.
So my next statement is not meant to be antagonistic. It is an honest and open question for those of you who think that $300,000 is too much to spend on playground equipment. Would it matter to you if we went out and took some pictures and presented some budgets of what our surrounding communities have done with how much they have spent on their playgrounds? So you can see what people are actually spending, or is this just going to be too expensive no matter what? And that's not a, you know, that's not meant to be antagonistic, but you could, I mean, you know, we could substitute $200,000 or $100,000, and the argument could be made exactly the same, right? So I guess my question is what is the basis for it's too expensive? And does anything that we present matter,
May I?
or is it just going to be a no vote?
I'm gonna start talking.
No, you won't. All right, trustee Kaminsky.
No, who's saying that $300,000 is too much? We just said, if you want to roll it over, roll it over.
No, just-
If you want to spend 300,000 now, you got it in your budget from last year. Go spend it. We're talking about the 111 or whatever that may or may not happen in a capital budget. But no, I think the $300,000 is probably a very modest budget. I really do. And I have no problem with us spending that.
It's minimal, not modest.
There you go.
Approved.
It's a minimal year.
Trustee Peeper.
To answer your question, I think $300,000 for new playground equipment is actually ridiculous, and I don't think it should be spent. If we're gonna do it, let's do it right, and you can't do it right with 300,000. You need something way more than 300,000, and that's the message I've been trying to get across. If you're gonna do an all-inclusive, then do an all-inclusive and make it good, but we don't have the money. So I want to roll it over. Yes, I want Park and Recs to get more money to do it right and do it right the first time, because why would we spend this much money to have a mediocre or a lower end equipment? I want good equipment. I do support it, but the last year's budget, we only had 300,000. Yes, I fully support rolling that over. And then let's see what additional, you are rolling the dice because we all know how broke we are right now, but I fully support new equipment. I want better equipment, not lower end at 300. Does that make, I'm, you're welcome.
Trustee Myers.
Mr. President, I'd like to change my motion to change that 111,000 out of there and have it only with the 300,000, please.
So you're making a motion to amend?
I'm just changing mine at this time, which I can do. I don't have to
Okay.
amend it.
I'm just understanding what he's asking. So your motion then would be you're retracting your original motion and asking it to be only for the approval of rolling the $300,000 forward for the cost of playground equipment for Kinderberg Park.
As Mr. President, for 2024.
And the second on that motion? And then the second stays, so further discussion. Trustee Jan Miller, did you have your hand up?
Yes. Thank you. Kinderberg Park, the playground equipment is well worn. It needs to be replaced. But I do question making that particular park for all disabilities. I think we do not have parking stalls. You don't get close to the playground. I don't know if everyone needs to get close in order to enjoy that, or they have to be wheeled up. But for us to keep moving forward on the Kinderberg Park, I think that we could do a really nice job of replacing the current equipment with something that is more in that 300 range. I'm for it.
If I may say something, the equipment that I've showed is not just for kids with disabilities, it's kids with all abilities. I mean, any child with any physical ability can use any piece of that equipment.
Understood, but some of the equipment is specifically built for people with disabilities, and it's more expensive. It's going to be more expensive. I'm just saying, can we?
Well, there's some ramps that makes it
Right.
easier for wheelchair
Understood.
accessibility, but
Right.
other than that, I don't think there's any actual equipment that any all ability child couldn't use.
I remember from your presentation, the committee was looking at this as an opportunity to introduce this equipment and have only a couple pieces of it, maybe 2 or 3. And that's why they were suggesting it. I don't think they were looking for it to be a complete all-inclusive, but since this was the next one that was being replaced, and it'll be several years before others will be replaced, because this is the last one within the rotation. They just thought of it as a good opportunity to start introducing that for residents that have children that may have that need, so they have a playground they could specifically target to bring their kids to. I don't think their intent was fully all-inclusive, which I've heard several trustees make a reference to. I think it was just a starting point at that point, but the 300 was approved as part of the borrowing from 2023, so that is still there. And anything else beyond that is up to this board to consider or not in the 2024 capital borrowing budget. So we'll see what happens. Further discussion? No further discussion. Everybody understand the motion as it's been restated?
State that motion, please.
Sure.
To roll forward the $300,000 from the 2023 capital borrowing or capital budget.
For the cost of placing equipment at kindergarten. Any further discussion? No further discussion. Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Baum,
Aye.
Trustee Kaminsky, Trustee Hudson,
Aye.
Trustee Myers,
Aye.
Trustee Nyrider, Trustee Jan Miller,
Aye.
Trustee Peeper, President Walter.
Carries. It takes care of all unfinished business, taking us to new business, starting with new business item A. An ordinance amending section 17 of the zoning code and section 18 subdivision and plating code of the Village of Germantown Municipal Code related to the use of green infrastructure best management practices to reduce stormwater pollution and improve water quality. To give us some more information background on this new business item, I'll turn the meeting over to our Community Development Director, Jeff Retzlaff.
Thank you, Mr. President. As indicated, we have some proposed text amendments to the zoning and subdivision code. Most of the amendments are recommended by DNR to our zoning and subdivision codes that remove barriers to the use of green infrastructure in new development and redevelopment. The DNR proposed amendments result from an audit of our codes pursuant to a Wisconsin Sea Grant program. Amendments are necessary to ensure our ongoing compliance with our MS4 permit requirements, so they are strongly recommended by the DNR. A few housekeeping amendments are also proposed in this package. They're being recommended now by staff out of convenience and a timeliness with regard to some of the issues we're dealing with. Green infrastructure, essentially effective water management means, measures, and practices that use natural and/or man-made features designed to improve water quality and or reduce flooding by reducing stormwater volume and pollution. The most common types of green infrastructure that I'm sure you've all heard of: infiltration basins, rain gardens, permeable pavement, subsurface detention systems, rain barrels, and the like. The zoning code amendments are highlighted in yellow in the packet materials. Both the zoning and subdivision codes have been repeated in their entirety. So while there's a lot of pages, the amendments are relatively few and widely dispersed. They're relatively minor in nature. They include things such as revised definitions, changes to parking stall size and number requirements recommended for certain uses, allowing vegetated stormwater features and landscaping, allowing the use of permeable pavement with village approval in certain circumstances, modifying dumpster enclosure, screening and design requirements to prevent contamination, snow storage requirements, modifying our shared parking allowances, and the like. The non-housekeeping amendments include adding provisions to deal with accessory buildings and structures for commercial and industrial districts, and also to address the use of gazebos, pergolas, arbors, outside kitchens, and the like in residential districts. We also added some language to clarify the extent of our noticing requirements for variance appeals, the public hearing notices that go out for our Board of Zoning Appeals, from 1,000 feet down to 300 feet, which is the standard distance we've used historically. A few years ago, we changed that distance for rezoning purposes, and the Board of Zoning Appeal requirement sort of got caught up in the wash there. So we're sorting that out. So we notice just those that are most immediately affected or impacted by a variance request. The Plan Commission recommendation for the changes is to approve them as drafted.
Motion.
Thank you. Board,
To approve new business A.
Second.
motion made and seconded to approve new business item A. Any discussion on the motion to approve? Trustee Chan Miller.
Thank you. As I was reading through the amending these sections, the zoning code, et cetera, there are several areas where they recommend that a village engineer review this. And we don't have a village engineer at this moment in time. We have an interim. Is that correct?
No, that is not correct. We do have an engineering staff that serves us in light of our own in-house engineer. We haven't gone without engineering review and staff in the absence of an actual village engineer employee for the village consulting services.
So we're paying consultants to review this.
For a while now, yes.
Yeah. So Grafe has looked at this.
No, actually, Grafe is involved in recommending the changes. They have been working with the DNR as part of the Sea Grant program to do the audits of municipality codes. They've been doing that since, I believe, since 2013. We're just one of the last communities to actually make some of these changes to our codes. The engineers that were involved in reviewing this included our former engineer, village engineer, Brion Bishke. Granted, that was a long time ago. And most recently, Larry Ratachek as our public works director and village engineer.
Smith, okay.
Who was the former? What was his name?
Rion,
Rion?
yeah,
Oh, Brion.
probably about 10 years ago.
Gotcha. Why are we, and then a question, one of the changes that jumped out at me were parking spaces. Parking spaces, they want to make it instead of 920 to 9 by 18. And I drive around, there are a lot of big cars and big SUVs. So I'm wondering, is 18 going to be long enough for some of the vehicles that are parked out here? And what do we have in our village parking lot?
Well, let me address it this way. Our current code requirement is for 180 square feet of
Right.
parking stall space. And that sort of leaves it up to the developer to decide whether they're going to have 10 by 18 or 9 by 20. The two stall sizes that, equal or greater than that, 180 square feet. What happens realistically is on our site plans that we approve, the Planning Commission approves with new parking areas, more often than not, the developers are proposing stall sizes that are 9 feet wide by 20 feet long. And valid question, we're cutting off 2 feet off the end of the stripe in the parking lot, but we're not necessarily adjusting or changing the aisle width between stalls from the back of one to the back of another. It's more of a change on paper than it is in reality. And so the staff does not think it's a significant issue. There was a time when going to a narrower stall was proposed as well as the depth. That certainly wouldn't fly for reasons you just mentioned. A lot of trucks, a lot of large vehicles, a lot of swinging doors. At this point, again, staff supports the recommended change and really doesn't think it's going to have a significant bearing on reducing the pavement as much as one might think, given just the wording.
Well, it reduces the backup area, doesn't it? If you're backing up.
It not necessarily. It doesn't necessitate or dictate a reduction in the aisle width as well as the parking stall size. So the developers are still going to put in the width between the back ends that is reasonable for their vehicles to get in and out.
Well, what is the premise for us changing this?
The intention is to result in some less asphalt, yes.
But we have all kinds of things in this document that says we have to plant so many trees within the parking lot area.
Correct?
Yeah, correct. So doesn't that make up for some of the usable space, usable or the pavement that's put down? If
Well,
you have islands of trees and
I
stuff.
think the intention from the DNR is to sort of chip away, if you will, figuratively speaking, on the amount of asphalt that's used for parking purposes by requiring a little less parking stall size, requiring a little more landscaping, requiring the dumpster enclosures to be graded or surfaced in a way that runoff doesn't immediately go into our stormwater basins. Things like of that nature. A little bit here, a little bit there helps with the reduction of flooding and the improvement of water quality.
So it is the DNR that's requesting this smaller parking.
The DNR is recommending it. And frankly, when I told their staff that this item would likely result in some pushback from the village, the answer was, well, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, but we recommend that you reduce this. I mean, we're one of the few communities that has a relatively large parking stall size as a mandatory requirement. To our benefit, though, we do have a set of regulations with regard to parking stalls that is based on a guideline. It's not a hard and fast, you need 10 stalls per 100 square feet, sort of a standard like other communities have. Ours is set up to be a set of guidelines, and we allow the developer to explain whether or not they're going to need all those stalls. And if they don't, at least show us where in your site additional parking could be provided somewhere in the future if it's necessary.
And in the section, Jeff, where it's talking about screening requirements around the garbage areas, trash areas, trash bins, etc. It's, is that including residential and commercial? It's like about page 145 in our,
Yeah, the screening requirements, the changes that are proposed are all in our business and industrial zoning districts. They're intended for those large dumpster enclosure areas, not an individual residential dwelling that may have a few pull-out carts or the like.
so would you say that most of these changes are focused more on industrial? Because we have a lot of residential in here also.
Yeah, they tend to be. They would have, the impact of them would be to reduce asphalt on more commercial and industrial developments than a residential.
Those were my, those are my big questions.
Further discussion? No further discussion? This requires roll call. Okay. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
One opposed. Motion carries. Next item under new business is item B, Bryan Building Corporation, Agent for Golden Pet Manufacturing and Goldendale 4 LLC, property owner located at West 206, North 12880 Gateway Court, certified survey map to combine, redivide parcels necessary to accommodate 129,000 square foot facility expansion. More information, background on this new business item. Once again, we'll turn the meeting over to Director Retzloff.
Thank you, Mr. President. Golden Pet Manufacturing is expanding a little sooner than originally expected back in 2021 when the plans were first approved. They did forecast a building expansion to the south of the existing facility. However, this expansion was a little bit larger, includes both building expansions on the south side as well as the north side. On this graphic, you can see on the north side of the building that's highlighted in red, there's a stormwater basin. That outlot is going to be added to the Golden Pet manufacturing site to make way for the building addition to the north. The stormwater basin is going to be reduced in size on that lot to the north, and also a larger basin constructed immediately to the west. And I'll show you some details on that in just a bit. The CSM itself is shown as highlighted. Again, outlot 1 from a previous CSM is being added to the original lot for the Golden Pet site, as shown on the screen. The proposed site plan is as shown here, with the orange areas being the building additions to the existing gray area. Approximately 130,000 square feet is being added to the existing facility. You can see those additions highlighted here. And again, the stormwater basin that's on the aerial photo on the top half of this slide shows that existing basin. That's going to be relocated to the west, as shown on the bottom half of the slide. A small portion of stormwater area is going to be retained, and that'll serve the building expansion for Golden Pet. A couple of aerial views of the proposed expansion looking northwest from the Goldendale, above the Goldendale at Holy Hill intersection, and looking southwest from the Goldendale at Rockfield Road intersection approximately. The Plan Commission recommendation is to approve with one condition, that was to make some minor technical corrections prior to recording. Those have been done and are reflected in the CSM that was in the packet. Again, the Plan Commission recommendation is to approve the CSM.
Motion to approve new business B.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Is there any discussion on the motion to approve? No discussion? Trustee Chan Miller.
Visually, Jeff, the pond looks much smaller when it's on the west side, elongated. Is it about the same gallons or square feet?
But, well, you're asking if it will retain a
volume,
similar
thank you.
amount of water?
Yes, is
Yeah,
it
it's being designed and constructed to retain
what is
comparable amount. Yes,
acceptable?
yes. We wouldn't let them put in a pond less than what was required to accommodate the stormwater
I
runoff.
hope not. Thank you.
And because of their addition, then the pond to the west is needed or to the south? The one,
No, it was more needed just because of the lack of space, frankly.
okay. How much of the Whistler is impacted?
I'm sorry?
How much of the tree line that's showing there is impacted?
A significant amount. There's still going to be a portion of that wooded area. Let me get back to the main aerial here. Belongs to the lot to the south for the dielectric facility. So that wooded area will remain subject to their expansion plans.
Okay. Further discussion? No further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Next item under new business is item C, a resolution for the declaration of public necessity and relocation order to construct a highway through the area generally bounded by Freistadt Road, Goldendale Road, Interstate 41, and the Wisconsin and Southern Railroad.
Motion to approve new business C.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to approve? No discussion. Trustee Baum.
Yeah, just for clarification, is this is the final route, or are we still subject to, we've done all of our negotiations with these people, we've got all of our wetland issues resolved?
So the general route is what you're seeing here.
This is general,
the-
it's not
Right,
final.
the specific design, you know, if we needed to zig around a particular area of wetland that we're not able to fill, for example, or something like that, would still be part of the ultimate design that, you know, would be part of the actual construction when we get to that point. With that said, obviously, we've done our best to try to minimize those, you know, instances where we anticipate we might need to do that.
Just so everybody understands, there may be some tweaking here and there. This is
Right,
not
and-
final.
And,
This
and
is-
certainly, you know, one of the things that we heard, for example, during citizen comment is concerns about, you know, forcing these people to sell their lands. Obviously, that could be an end result of this process. Based on our preliminary discussions, we don't anticipate that being an issue. We think it's just going to be a negotiated deal. Ultimately, it helps each of these property owners, all of whom are holding effectively for future development. And so having this helps them do that. And so we think that would be a good for them. And I think that they agree and would go through it. Critically, we didn't include the one that we knew had told us that they didn't want to be involved. The landscape company right on the freeway had indicated that they didn't want to be involved. And so the route went around them and didn't go through their property. So we do anticipate that this will be a friendly negotiated purchase, but we have to follow this process just in case.
Yeah, and as I recall, there were only 3 property owners that we are working with.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion, trustee Chan Miller.
And then, Brian, will you be doing the negotiating with the residents?
No, I will not be. As part of our intergovernmental agreement, Richfield is going to take on the responsibility of doing the negotiations. And so what'll happen, in fact, we've already kind of started the planning for that, is that village staff here will reach out to the property owners and basically make that handoff. Not significantly different than when we would acquire real estate in any other way where we have an agent that would work on our behalf, where they would, you know, reach out and do that. But we'd typically do that initial reach out and say, hey, here's the individuals that are going to be talking with you.
So if they're the real estate agent, let's just call them real estate agent,
Right.
for lack of a better term, will they charge us anything for that service?
Nope, that's a cost that's borne entirely by Richfield.
Okay. And you said this line could zig or zag depending on what comes back from possibly DNR.
The right of way itself, or the lines that you're seeing on this, likely would not change. That is basically the set in stone what we're going to acquire in terms of the actual right of way that we potentially need. What you may see change is the specific route within that right of way. We might, you know, for example, in an area where you know, there's the piece, and I should have thought ahead to have an exhibit that I could put up. But for example, there's the piece that as you come due north, you know, and we kind of squeeze through the wetland that goes through the whole middle of that whole district. You know, it might be that even though we're going to acquire right of way that's the full width, that we might squeeze down the actual roadway to try to minimize the impacts through that wetland, for example. And so while we, you know, shoot for what we ultimately would like to do in the area, based on planning and anticipated design, that'll change once the specifics come through. So
If in fact they negotiate with the three owners, just an example, and we say, oh my gosh, we think you paid too much, and we have to pay half. We have to. Do we have any recourse?
yeah, I mean, certainly, you know, that component is something that we haven't really addressed specifically in our discussions at this point of what happens if we anticipate that the numbers come back and are unreasonable. The benefit to doing this approach, though, is that if you have that property owner that just is being unreasonable, you know, you've heard a number of $100,000 an acre, for example. I don't know that I agree with that number because of a number of reasons, but it's not far. You know, it's probably somewhere in the 70 to 100,000 range would be my guess. you get the property owner that just says, well, I need 200,000 an acre. The benefit to this approach is that you can say, okay, well, we've tried to negotiate, you're being unreasonable. We're going to use the eminent domain process to acquire it at the reasonable and fair market value of the property that's there. The design is to make sure that we're paying just the actual market value as opposed to some inflated number that is part of that.
But then it would be the village of Germantown asking for the eminent domain, correct?
Correct. The acquisition would be in our name. Yes.
Village.
Right.
Right. Thank you.
Further discussion, trustee Hudson.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So, I'm not, I am not comfortable with, anybody, negotiating on our behalf. So if Richfield goes out and they negotiate a deal that we don't like, what can we do about it?
Well, again, at the end of the day, the actual trigger of purchasing the property is something that still comes to this body for final approval. And you would have the ability to say no at the time that that's presented. As I say, it's a negotiated process. There is no authority at this point other than to just say go out and negotiate. So
Is there a back and forth with the village of Germantown and the village of Richfield during the negotiation process? Or are we just set out and Richfield hammers out a deal and comes back and says, this is it?
No, I would anticipate the individual who's doing the acquisitions, at least as we understand it, is their village attorney. It's somebody that I have a good working relationship with, and so I do anticipate that if there were hurdles or problems that would arise, that we would be in contact and discuss those. It is that, I mean, we've met a couple times already to talk about the preliminary steps and how to get there. So I anticipate that to continue.
Thank you.
Further discussion? No further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
2 opposed. Motion carries. Next item under new business is item D, 5-year capital improvement plans. Give us some information, background on this. I'll turn the meeting over to the village administrator, Steve Kreckler.
Thank you. This is actually a 5-year plan that from 23 to 27. One of the last work products that our former Public Works Director, Larry Ratajczyk, completed. So, and I think he might be on WebEx tonight. I did send him a message. I say, if he's listening, being retired, I hope he has a cocktail in his hand. This is
Get it on the screen?
no, unfortunately, we can't. But this is in the packet. If you're looking in the packet here tonight for the document that we'll be going through, it's on page 263 of the packet. So, and actually, maybe the village attorney can do that while I'm talking. This is similar to 5-year plans that this village board has seen before. I think that some of the real positive improvements that have been made over the past few years, as Director Ratajczyk is working on this, is expanding the scope to include non-public works departments and to include more of the work that's being done in utilities, and also to get a little bit better at what we're projecting out into the out years and making it more complete and more thorough. Some of the other highlights that are in here, so that you're aware, we are including in the 5-year plan the new police department campus in 2025 with design work in 2024. The library expansion in 2027. And then we've included information that capital projects that were identified in the comprehensive outdoor facility plan, a recreation plan that was completed by the Park and Rec Department and went through the Park and Rec Commission. You'll also see that all of the utility projects are listed. And with that, I'd be happy to try to answer any questions that you might have.
Board? Trustee Chan Miller?
Well, this is really nice. This is what I've been asking for. However, I wanted to, doesn't this correlate with our budget for 2024?
Well, this will be a starting point for the 2024 budget. We're just beginning work on the 2024 budget. So this will be when the finance director and I are working with the departments on putting together the 2024 capital budget. We'll start with what's included in the plan here. That'll be presented to the village board in September, and then approved by the village board in November.
So this is just a wish list.
It's a guide.
It's a guide.
It's a start. It's a plan. I would say. But-
Well, it's an unauthorized, let's see. So we're about our finance director told us, I think, the last time we met that we're about 900 or 1 million short for the 2024 budget. Is that correct?
No.
No.
Those numbers are related to the general fund. So
Right.
the village budget is divided into several different funds. And that number is for the general fund or the operating budget. Sometimes it's referred to. That does not include the capital budget. So the capital budget is typically financed in Germantown by the issuance of debt that we issue general obligation notes in the spring of each year. And 10-year notes. And typically we try to keep that roughly around $3.5 million per year for levy supported debt. And then there's additional debt for the utilities. So there's no direct relationship between the presentation that the finance director gave at the last village board meeting that talked about our $800,000 operating budget gap and the capital improvements plan.
So, if we're, I'm just taking a pause here. If we're strapped on the budget side and we're saying, but it's okay to borrow 3.5 mil?
We've been doing it. It's just, he's just citing past borrowing expenditures. It doesn't mean it's going to continue or that this board will approve it this year, but over the past 3 years, it's been over 3 million, yeah.
Not last year.
Well, because we took it out of
General fund.
right, but it was still 3 million in approved that we took out of
General fund.
surplus.
Surplus.
Yes.
Mhm. Well, I have, I would like an update on the 2022 audit. Do we have an update?
That's not on the agenda.
Okay. That's still out there. Well, for this, it's a nice outline of what the departments want, but I'd like more explanation. It's like numbers. Why do we need this? Is something breaking down? I guess that's what I would like.
Trustee Kaminsky.
This is probably about the fourth one of these I've seen in the time I've been on the board. This is probably the most comprehensive. And you have to look at these things, this, in my opinion, this is a plan, but it is also a guide.
Right.
It depends, because we're still going to have the same system, whereas you might see a replaced pumper truck on here, I'm not sure what year, well, that's way out in 2032. Let's say there was something like that on the schedule for the next year or two, we may or may not approve that, because we still come to that approval of those capital expenses in, say, February of 2024.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
So, but for this, what I like about this is we do know, and it's becoming, to me, it's very clarified that we have to start getting our plans pulled together for example, the public safety building, the police department. And that is something we've been seeing now over the past 3-4 years, and now it's time to start putting that plan together. And we are obviously going to be borrowing for that separately and specifically, which any community would do, because you certainly can't do that under normal financial circumstances of your property taxes coming in and then going out to buy that. But, so I really like the way that is laid out here, and I do like, and I said this at Public Works, the way the library is included in here after the police station, though, because of that extra space we may be able to utilize or whatever. And again, does that mean it's going to happen exactly in that year? We don't know. But if you don't have this laid out, that this is a community need, this is something that benefits all constituents, that's what all these items are, and you have it laid out systematically, you're never going to get to it. You know, it's going to fall by the wayside or not be done. So I really do think that this is very good, and I hope Larry is listening, but if he's smart, he's not. And I'm glad we have this, and I think it's a plan to move forward on. And obviously, it's going to change, particularly the individual items here. For example, another plow truck. This may be the year we don't do a plow truck because it's very expensive. We don't know. So those kind of capital expenditures can move around a little bit. Whereas I don't think something as important as a police station can. And I hope that doesn't.
Trustee Baum?
Under the fire department, I'm just trying to understand what INTN, what is that supposed to be? The vertical words, the vertical writing? Oh, it's up at the top. Go back to the top.
That's intended to be blank. Is, but there were some, yeah. Part of it is the way the spreadsheet was constructed. It said intended to be blank. There were some rows that were deleted, and some of the letters were eliminated. So,
Okay.
it's your Wordle for the day.
Put your glasses on for that?
That distracted me from everything else on this page. This chart. No, I like it. It's very informative. It tells me more than I've had in years past. So thank you very much for putting it together.
You looking for us to put a motion through to approve it, or is it mostly out there for discussion and reference?
You know,
What kind of action are we looking for?
I think in general, I would recommend a motion to approve, and then this becomes the adopted 23 to 27 plan for capital plan for the Village of Germantown, and it's part of the record then.
No.
I'll make it.
Second.
Motion made and seconded, discussion, trustee Jan Miller, you had your hand up?
I was told that this was a guide, and a guide it should be. It's not going to get destroyed. All the departments have this, and I don't think we have. We have had enough in-depth look at this since we don't get the agenda until Friday afternoon to make any kind of a motion on it. So it's the document, it's there, and it's used as a guide.
Trustee Baum?
I think the motion is to approve it as a guide.
No,
No,
just to
no.
approve it as a plan.
That was, approve it as a plan, not as a
As
guide.
it states on the agenda, 5-year capital improvement plan. Right,
Plan.
absolutely they do. Anything else, trustee Baum?
No.
I think what I don't want to discount is the amount of effort that was probably put into this and the amount of research and thought, because you're looking at items that that have a kind of a shelf life, your trucks, your equipment, your mowers, and then your buildings and any replacement buildings. So I think when Larry was looking at it, he was thinking about it in that type of a rotation so that it came knowing how long a utility truck usually lasts. He projected it out and then brought it back through for overall rotation of all those trucks or all those pieces of equipment or all those mowers or whatever on something that made sense to him based on what he knows their lifetime to be. So I don't think we've ever had it to that detail. So I don't want to say that it's pie in the sky because it isn't. I think it's a very good comprehensive outlook of what is possible for capital expenditures going forward. Now, it's always up to the board or whoever the board is at that time to decide what they want or what they don't want as part of that borrowing plan and how much of it they're willing to put out against the levy for borrowing for that year. So at the same time, it can always be, pushed back a year or two, but it does give us a good look of all areas, all departments and equipment that needs replacing within that we really haven't had before. And I imagine it took many hours to get to this point. So for that, I am appreciative. And I think as other trustees have said, it's a more detailed look than what we've seen in the past. So again, for that, I appreciate it too. And I look at it as a good roadmap for our capital borrowing going forward as each board decides how much they want to bite off of that. Trustee Chan Miller.
It's a great roadmap. But I guess my question is, I don't believe this is the first year that this was available. Haven't they been using something like this?
Similar,
Steve?
but not within this much detail.
We've tried to improve it every year. And I don't know, I know there were some things that had been done in Germantown prior to my starting here 6 years ago. But when I was here, it initially started with just the Public Works Department and some of those projects and was done at a higher level. And I think, in my experience with capital planning and there's a lot of nice bells and whistles you can put on a plan and make it prettier for presentation. But the most important piece of it is to try to make sure it's comprehensive and to try to identify all the areas because, if you have a very pretty plan with a lot of bells and whistles, but you're missing some major components, you haven't really accomplished what you're trying to achieve through the plan. So I would agree with the comments that I think there's been a lot of improvements in this, and it is very comprehensive at this point. There's a couple of areas where we could still improve, I think, and get a little bit more detailed, particularly in the buildings area. But I think this has taken some significant steps.
So it did exist before, it's just never come before the board for approval?
No.
I mean, last year, it did come before the board.
Not in this,
No.
not this plan with this detail. There's always been a comprehensive plan out there since the David Shornack days. And what has been worked on over the past year is what you see before you today. But there has always been that comprehensive 5-year plan, but not to this amount of detail. And it's been projected out for larger pieces of equipment. Further discussion, Trustee Hudson, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, so it's nice. It has a great deal of detail, and I too am thankful and appreciative to see this. And perhaps it's my college studies that's the problem. I can go with path, I can go with guide, I can go with roadmap, but I do object to the word plan. Plan to me implies approval or the correct way of doing it, and because that word is in it, I unfortunately, again, I'm appreciative, but I can't support the word plan.
Wasn't this a goal at one time?
Yeah, it's not,
No.
not this year, but it was in previous years.
Just curious. Okay. Further discussion?
That's just word choice.
I'm understandable.
That's all.
Understandable. Any further discussion? We're not really spending money. So all those in favor, please say aye. Aye, opposed? 3 raises their hand, motion passes. Next item under new business is item E, Public Administration Associates recommendations for the recruitment of the Director of Public Works and Village Engineer. Village Administrator.
I'll give a brief introduction, and then we have Bruce Stelzner from Public Administration Associates, who's here to make some brief comments and recommendations to the village board. But as you all recall, in July, the village board authorized and directed me to bring on Public Administration Associates for 2 separate functions. One, to provide interim Public Works Director services, which Mr. Stelzner is providing, and then also to lead a recruitment for the Public Works Director and the Village Engineer. And after getting to know our Public Works Department and functions, as well as reviewing our job descriptions and pay ranges, Mr. Stelzner has some comments and recommendations.
Thank you. Again, my name is Bruce Stelzner, and I kind of have a little laryngitis today, so you have to bear with me, and I'll try to do my best. I've been here for about a month filling the interim director's role, and had looked at a number of things as the month has gone by, and beginning to get ready for the recruitment process. And so I put together a little memo, and I hope you've taken the opportunity to look at it. First of all, I'm very impressed with the community itself. You really have the trifecta of success here. You have community growth in residential areas, in commercial areas, and industrial areas, and that's generating a significant amount of infrastructure and a number of engineering requirements as you go through this process of building your community, and it's very successful. I would say that the majority of communities in the state of Wisconsin would be very jealous over your development and your development potential that you continue to have, and the open areas that you have for more development. And so as your time goes by, your engineering requirements are going to be fairly robust. Excuse me. Again, you have a lot of infrastructure. It's in the tens of millions of dollars of public infrastructure. You have a very robust capital improvement budget and an operating budget in the Public Works Department, somewhere in the combined neighborhood of $20 million a year in growth. And what happens in that range is that we see 15 to 20% of those costs go to engineering. So when you start looking at a $20 million capital improvement and operating budget, you're spending someplace between $3 and $4 million a year in engineering services. And so that's a pretty robust amount. And at one point in time, you had an engineering department of 5 people. Right now you have a half-time director and me, and you have 1 engineering tech. And so you're trying to do and work with significant developments, very robust developments. As you went through tonight's agenda, you saw a number of those things tonight as to what your development is, and there's more to come. So this is a very robust area. So as we looked at it, we started to look at what is it going to take in order to start filling out your engineering department. Well, you need a director, and you need a village engineer. And you probably need more staff in there as well. Again, you're working with someplace between $3 and $4 million in expenditures for consultant services. So one of the things I did was to attach one of your engineering contracts as an hourly rate to the 2-page memo I put out there. And you can see that for consultants, you're putting out up to $250 an hour to have a consultant do the work that you can do for significantly less with in-house engineering. And so And so you do have money to make adjustments in your capital outlay budget and your operating budget for what you're paying for consultants today. So the money is clearly there to make an adjustment. The other thing that's very important, and I noted, and I spent over 40 years in public works administration. My career has been pretty robust, and I've been state directors and state presidents of associations, and I've interacted with a lot of governments and a lot of folks over the years. And I took a look at your wages and your wage scale, and it's light. I can tell you that in the past year, I've done 5 recruitments for public works directors and village engineers or community engineers. And your wage scale is light for that recruitment. I can tell you that right now in the marketplace, there's not a whole lot of recruitments going on for public works directors and village and engineers. Those typically happen at the first of the year when that group retires, and then it gets very, very robust in November, December, January, February, March in the hiring process. Right now, there's only one community that's looking for a water utility director, and that's Oconomowoc. And their starting range for that utility manager is $153,000 a year. So that's what the market is. It's a very robust market. It's very sensitive to costs, and your wage scale is light. And so we've made a recommendation for a wage adjustment for the village engineer and the director of public works. I also have to tell you that you're pretty light on your superintendents too. So the superintendents that work in the public works area, their salaries are light. And if they decide to leave, you will not be able to recruit at what you're paying for them. You just will not be able to make that recruitment happen. So again, you may need a wage and classification study done. We're not targeted to do that kind of work this time, but we can make the recommendations for the village engineer and for the director of public works. So you can see on the attachment there what we're recommending the range to be. And again, I've done 5 recruitments this year, and this is a range that we can find success in. Otherwise, I've actually had to do 2 different searches for 2 different communities. I had to do their searches twice because they didn't make the adjustments the first time. So they went longer in their systems before they were able to replace the director and their village engineer. So again, it's important to do that. It's important to make that adjustment. The other recommendation we're making is that in the director of public works position, you look at the professional engineer as a recommendation or a preferred recommendation, but to drop it as a requirement, because I think that opens up the door for that market significantly more, where you may be able to find a public works administrator who can actually come in and manage the department differently than an engineer would manage it. That may be out there in the market. So we'd like to make that just a preferred requirement, not a requirement. So that's kind of where we're at, and I'm starting to lose my voice. I'm sorry.
Questions? Trustee Myers?
Steve, in 2020, you came up to this board to present a particular plan, and it was done by a study as such. And there were 3 different recommendations. Do you remember that?
I wasn't involved in that study, but I have read it. Yes.
There were several different alternatives that were laid out by that including I don't think they recommended one of the 3, but they did look at other alternatives for structuring public works.
And this board has never actually approved any one of those particular positions. Is it still your thoughts that they should be in that same situation with those 3 options?
I think that I think that the existing structure can work if we're able to fill those positions. And I think the changes that were considered at that point were in part because of the difficulties that we had filling the positions. And I think what what Mr. Stelzner and Public Administration Associates are saying, that if we adjust the salaries, that we can have success filling those positions. If we're able to fill those positions, the existing structure, I believe, works.
I would agree. I mean, I think that your existing structure is the right structure to have. I think back in 2020, when that study was done, you were functioning differently, and staff was different. And I think that there's some opportunities to be able to go back to a regular routine staffing of the department, which would be with the director and a village engineer and some engineering staff, eventually at some point. But I think that director has to provide that input to you in the future as to what that staffing should be.
One of the changes that I think that you made, Steve, was basically speaking, taking away some of the responsibilities that that Larry had and giving it back to the other three super. Thank you, David. For the other superintendents, wasn't it the only change that was made?
Well, the temporary change that was implemented has been in place for a couple of years now, was that the three superintendents were reporting directly to me. And again, that was due to issues that are no longer relevant. I believe that was, the board has always seen that as being a temporary arrangement. And I would recommend that when the positions are filled, that those reporting relationships return back to what they were previously.
If I remember right, that Public Works Director, and Bruce, you can help me in here too. I think we had it down at that was a position for a PE. That's still the same. Thoughts?
Currently the Public Works Director and the village engineer both require a PE certification. What's being recommended tonight is that the PE be preferred but not required for the Public Works Director. And I think that Public Administration Associates review is that we need to make sure we have one PE, but we don't necessarily need two PEs for those two positions.
I would agree with that particular aspect now that I understand it closer. The other thing that you mentioned, Bruce, in regards to the superintendents is I was given some information today in regard to where their pay is and so on and so forth. They're not even at the mid-range. And so I think that this board needs to look at that particular aspect going forward also. And I know it's not part of this new business E, but that's something that we need to be looking at, including your own salary, to be honest. Bump that up also. We've had the problems from before in regard with the fire department, where the captain was making more than the chief was. We need to be careful in regard to this so we don't have that aspect. This is all part of, in my mind, for retention of employees per se. And you brought that up yourself, Bruce. Thank you, Mr. President. I'm done.
Mm-hmm. Trustee Hudson.
So I agree that one PE is enough, but I have some questions about the ranges, the overlap of the ranges, and if the ranges are in fact big enough. And I'm not, I am not familiar with the ranges in the public setting. So for the director, on the low side, we're at 115, and on the high side, we're at 130. Is that correct?
That would be the recommendation. And again, that recommendation is really based on our hiring history for the past year, where we've hired in the past year, we've hired at just slightly over 122 and just under, well, for the Director of Public Works, we've had one at 122 and one at 118,000. So that range to 130 allows some growth over the future years, so you don't have to make that adjustment.
So is the higher, is that in fact the low end of the range? Is that one and the same, or what am I looking at here?
The lower end of the range would be someone fairly inexperienced who needs more experience. That would be where you hire at the lower end.
I apologize. I'm not asking the correct question. So for the director, is the minimum amount that we intend to pay 115,000?
Yes.
Okay.
That's his recommendation.
But what if we get a great candidate and we can't get them for 115,000 and we need to bring them in at, say, I don't know, 125. So with a very narrow range here, this job is not gonna look attractive to those candidates because it's gonna top out at 130. So my question is this range big enough on the high side?
I think the range is going to be enough to make the hire, if that's your question. I think the range is the right range. We've had a number of discussions internal to our public administration group over the salary range for this position. And this is a consensus of PAA, is that this should be the range for the public works director and the range for the village engineer. We think we can make the hire in that range.
If I may just
I don't think I'm
interject it.
getting effective.
I think I understand the question that you're asking, Trustee Hudson, and I think one of the things I've been looking at this is this provides this provides the data points to announce the position and to hire the position. I think that one of the things we would have to do if the board approves this is we have a series of salary ranges that that village positions fit into. This doesn't quite mesh with that. And I think it's another process to go back to the village pay ranges and figure out exactly how then does this change, which, gets superimposed onto the village pay ranges. So, for example, right now, the public works director is in the same pay range as a police captain, the fire chief, and the
So
community
these
development.
numbers are not in fact a pay range then?
Correct. These are,
Thank you. That's
Okay.
all. Thank you.
okay, I'll stop.
Trustee Kaminsky.
How much experience do we expect this engineer to have? How many years?
How many years
Yeah. Just a,
for the engineer?
right,
We're looking for at least 5 to 7 years.
for the village engineer.
Yes, for both
Okay.
both positions, both the director and the engineer.
And we do need that. Is that what we agreed? For a public works director for sure, but for the village engineer. Okay. I'm wondering what this is going to do to all the salary ranges in the village. And I think this is something that belongs in GGF. To be looking at all the salary ranges, even if this delays something, another month after we've delayed for a year and a half. This is going to affect everything in a year when we don't have money and we have to see where this money is going to come from. And we have to take care of the people, like right now, over the past year, our supervisor level, who have been doing everything in public works and are not even at their midpoint. I would want to work on that first before I would say, let's give away the farm for the new people coming in. That's just my opinion, but we have to analyze where we're at before we make a mistake on this.
I'll go Trustee Pieper and then I'll go back to Trustee Hudson.
I make a motion to send this to GGF.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Trustee Hudson, you had your hand up.
Okay, is this a hiring target or is this a pay range? Because those are two different things.
This is not, there is no action before the board tonight to change the village pay ranges.
And are the numbers here within the established pay ranges that the village has?
The pay range for the public works director currently goes from a low of 97,392. The midpoint is 110,147, and the top of the range is 119,810. So this would the midpoint and the potential hiring would be above the pay range for the director of public works. The village engineer has a bottom of 83,777, midpoint in 99, and a top of 108. So the same thing would be true for the village engineer position.
So there's an issue there.
And what I would suggest, maybe I'm suggesting we try to have our cake and eat it too, is that in order to expedite the hiring processes for these positions, the board authorizes the hiring range that Public Administration Associates is presenting. We will have to go back through GGF to recalibrate the pay ranges.
Thank you.
Trustee Kaminsky.
That's assuming you don't know what GGF is going to determine here. I mean, we can't just alter everything. Then it's going to be the police chief coming, then the fire chief coming, then the lieutenant. We've been through this. Anybody that's been on this board more than 5 years has been through this a couple of times, and it's not pretty. And like I go back to, we're not taking care of the people we already have on staff who are doing everything to keep this department going right now. And those are the people that aren't getting anything, not even a little spiff right now for handling everything. And that is not fair. GGF has to take a look at this. If we go out and give you these ranges, then you end up finding somebody for like 129,000 and it's not in our range, then we have another dilemma. You know, we have to get this sorted out. You don't want to go out with anything lower than this, is what I'm hearing, because you've hired 5 people and this is the ranges that you need. Now, I know that in West Allis, currently, no, it's Pewaukee, I think, they're hiring a public works director engineer and their top of their range is 119,000. You're probably familiar with that, right? I don't know how much experience they're asking for there, but Pewaukee's bigger than us. I mean, I have seen lower price tags out there. Now, I'm not trying to be a cheapskate. Maybe this is what we have to pay, but then we, as a board and as GGF on committee, have to decide where this money's going to come from, who are not going to hire this year if they leave. You know, we have a lot of pieces to this puzzle to put into place. And we've been without a village, a public works director and a village engineer for so long right now. It's really a shame that Larry didn't want to stay on as a consultant, but here we are.
Trustee Jan Miller.
I agree with Trustee Kaminsky. But as stated, we don't have the numbers before us, unless it's hidden in here that I didn't see it, that the village of Germantown is actually spending on all of the outside consulting engineers. Do we?
You do not have that number. What you have is the industry standard, which is 15 to 20% of your total budget. So you have an $18 million capital outlay budget and about a $2 million operating budget. That's $20 million. Out of $20 million in the type of projects that's allocated to, you spend between 15 and 20% of that budget on engineering services. So on $20 million, 15% would be $3 million, 20% would be $4 million. And that's what you spend every year to hire outside consultants. And you hire them at that rate that's attached to that to that sheet, which says you're paying up to $250 an hour for that consultant service. That's a whole lot different than paying $65 an hour for a staff individual, right?
I agree.
That's the significant difference. And I know from experience that we will definitely struggle trying to find someone with the current range that the village has. We will not find anybody.
Right.
I've gone through this twice before, and what we found before, honest was a grader operator and a farmer that had truck driving experience for a public works director. That was the first goal that I had when I did the Ripon. In Ripon, in the Ripon community. I also did Jefferson. And in Jefferson, we made 2 offers, both over $120,000, and both people turned it down because there wasn't enough money. And so that's in your area. That's a community similar size. And again, Oconomowoc is looking for a utility manager. Starting pay is $150,000.
Right.
And so, without making the adjustment, we will definitely struggle to find somebody. And I know that as doing this position interim, I have a kind of an end of a service you know,
Mhm.
that I'm looking at. And it doesn't go into you doing a wage classification study. That takes me beyond what my level of service would be for you.
Right.
So as a community, I can't provide that service for that length of time. So again, you're gonna have, you'll be down to one engineering tech.
Yeah, no, it's not
And
right.
that's just for a community in the size of Germantown and with the development that's occurring in Germantown.
Right.
You really need professional staff here. And I can't overemphasize, you know, my 40 years is plus of experience in public works administration says you need this staff badly.
Right. I agree with you, and I would like you to just give your opinion. So we have a director and a village engineer openings, right? But in the ideal world, a village this size, what should the staff look like in engineering? Is it 2 people? 2.5, 3, 4? With all the, what's going on?
In reality, you should have a director, you
Mhm.
should have a village engineer, you
Mm.
should have a registered land surveyor, and you should have 2 technicians. You should have a group of 5
5.
that you're working with.
Yeah.
Because right-of-way plats can be reviewed by them as an RLS. You can develop right-of-way plats, and you're looking at a lot of them. You have a significant amount of development going on.
Right.
And you really need that kind of staffing.
I-
And how you pay for it is really the reduction of what you pay for
Outside.
consultant services.
Right.
And that easily covers those wages.
Understood. Thank you.
Trustee Kaminsky.
All the more reason to get this right is because of everything you just said. You're probably familiar in West Allis, they're searching too. For somebody with 5 years' experience and their pay, there's not even a range. $79,000 is what they're put out there.
For
Now,
engineer, for department. of
that
Public Works.
is for a senior civil engineer.
I-
I'm just saying,
Yeah, well,
so there are ranges out there.
Yes.
And before we handcuff our village into a huge financial mess with salaries again, we have to get this sorted out correctly. That's all I'm saying. And if you have to go out and look now, I would say use the upper end of our range if you need to, or something magical like that. But there's no way I could support this and then have a candidate come in at say $29,000. It's out of our range, and then we got to adjust all the ranges, not just in the Public Works Department, but I mean across the village. And where's that money coming from?
I can tell you that there are other recruitments,
Let the man speak.
there are other recruitments going on as trustee, you've indicated that. They're listed in the municipality magazine, and they're on the right-hand side of the page, which means they're open until filled. And they've been open for an extended period of time. And again, they're open for an extended period of time because the rates are too low and they're not able to make the hires.
What, right now, as part of, municipality, Department of Public Works Director or village engineer, aren't we really fighting the climate of, what the private industry is paying versus what the public is? And couldn't you almost liken it to where the housing market kind of is, where you're paying on the higher range of it because there isn't as much available like right now? And so you're always having to reach out, and you're really getting, a lot of municipalities are getting kneecapped because they can't compete with the private sector and what is out there in the private sector. So those that are leaving in most cases, they're going to the private sector because they're starting at a higher wage, and it's hard to recruit somebody away from that, because they're in a higher range. But you're almost going out and stealing somebody else's engineer, aren't you? Just going to another community and saying, you know what, maybe they're getting paid just a little bit under that and they're willing to take that next step up. So I think we're caught in between a couple different circumstances in the climate of engineers and how we're competing against the private sector. I think we need to look at it as a whole, and I wouldn't have a problem going out at the high range of what we have now, just to start, and then we can see if it gets any bites. But at the same time, we're looking at it at GGF and looking at it as a whole, because Steve, honestly, we're gonna have to start with you. and then start working it down from there and seeing what's possible in regards to not only next year's budget, but future budgets.
Well,
You want
I guess what,
That's fine.
as we're having this conversation, and it is an issue, and it's an issue that's bigger than these two positions. And it's going to be something that we have to talk about as we go through the budget process later on this year. My concern with waiting is I think that what you're suggesting that we need to do, and I would agree that we need to do it, is to do a full salary study. And to look at all of the positions and all of the pay ranges. Because that's the only way that these fit in and address the issues that are being raised. The problem that I see with that is that is a multi-month process.
Not doing that.
And if we go through that process, then I'm concerned because we do have a limited time frame for our interim, and I don't think we want to leave these positions vacant.
No, but I'm not ready to make those jumps. Trustee Kaminsky.
Okay, hopefully my last bite on this, but I do not see a full salary study in the offing here. I see GGF sitting down with what we already put together under your tutelage over the last 2-3 years, where we are at on the range. There's 3 points, the midpoint, the high, the low. Let's see where we're at for everybody and how this is going to affect that. And then you have to be at that meeting and tell us where this money is going to come from next year. Because that's the golden question, if we're going to do this. What are we cutting out of our budget? What positions are we cutting out of our budget? Where is this money going to come from? Because until I know that, I can't approve anything like this. I can't. I mean, it's just poor fiscal responsibility for me to sit here and vote yes for this. I can't. I agree with Dean. Start out with the high range, see if we get any nibbles or bites. Get on every job board you can. Are we using Ehlers, by the way? That was another one I saw. I don't know if we're using it. Get on these job boards and let's see if we can generate some interest with the high end of our current range. And that's my last comment on this because I can't support it the way it is.
But right now, the discussion is, and the motion is to put it to GGF.
Right.
Okay, so you're framing your comment in regards to moving it to GGF for that reason?
Absolutely.
Okay. Further discussion? Trustee Hudson? And then I'll come back to you.
So I apologize. So aren't there national surveys we can buy with data that will tell us what you pay in the Midwest for this job and that job with an end size that we can look at, and the salaries in the mid ranges? Isn't that purchasable information?
I do collect data from neighboring municipalities all the time. It's not generally exactly the same because it depends on what the person's doing, the community size. There's a lot of factors that go into it, the amount of years of experience somebody has, the education levels. So there's a lot more detail that goes into it that doesn't go into my technical studies. My studies go into comparisons from other communities.
Yeah, but I guess I'm looking even larger. Is there like an organization that will give us the salary ranges for?
There are salary ranges that we can purchase. There are several consulting companies that do salary studies that also do the surveys and would sell that data. So you could look at and see what is the average wage for a
Administrator in the Great Midwest.
Yep, and you can even get more specific into the state of Wisconsin and community size, 50,000 to 20,000 is a range that I see in some of them. And that would give you an idea. And that's something that we can bring forward. It's something we could bring forward to GGF and have a further conversation on it.
What does that cost?
It's something we could, a few $100s or $1,000. I'm thinking
Within
of
your approval?
within my approval range.
Okay. Trustee Pieper.
Call question.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to call the question. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Opposed, raise your hands. 3 opposed, motion carries. So the question is, and the motion is to take this to GGF for further discussion. Does that offset, and this is a question for the motion maker, does that offset the possibility of still putting out an ad at the top level of our current ranges?
Yes, we can, because it's,
I believe there's no discussion after you call the
Yeah.
question and it's been voted on.
I'm asking a question.
that we
Okay.
talked about that.
And all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Oppose? None opposed? Motion carries. Anything else to add, sir?
If you decide that you want to go through a wage classification study, those typically take 4 to 6 months. If you try to grab something off a canned program, it won't look at everybody. And again, if your goal is to look at everybody, you really need to do the wage classification study. The other thing is, PAA may decide not to do this recruitment for you at that range, simply because we're not going to be successful in it, and we're not going to be able to find a candidate for you at that amount of money. So I'm going to have to talk to the PAA leadership to see what they want to do. And that was part of what we sent to the administrator when we sent the agreement over to him, was in that first email that says, we really need to talk about the wage in order to do the recruitment. And you may just not have enough wage there for us to do the recruitment.
Okay.
That's what the market is.
All right, let us know what the outcome of that discussion is. All right, that takes care of all items on tonight's agenda under new business.
Oh, there's another one.
Yes, there is.
Amended agenda.
What is?
It was on the amended agenda.
Oh,
You might not have that printed out.
I took this out of the front.
Oh, okay. We printed out the wrong copy then.
What is it?
I've got. the
Make a
wrong one.
motion to approve it.
What is it? Okay, report on additional police officer candidate in WCTC Police Academy fall class.
Make a motion that we accept.
Let's try to keep nicknames out of this.
Thank you.
What was the motion?
Expedited. Nothing against our chief.
I want to hear if he sat here, he might as well say something. What do you got, chief?
He can still say.
So we had called an emergency meeting of the Public Safety Committee last week. The challenge we're having right now is we did just go through a hiring process. We were able to hire an officer for the vacancy. That's a lateral transfer. He's an officer from Milwaukee County. However, we are aware that we will have a retirement in January. That person already submitted a matter of indicating his intentions. If we wait till then, our concern was that spot will no longer be available in the academy. We did find a spot, and there is one. That's WCTC is not correct. That's actually MATC, the Milwaukee Area Technical College, where the vacancy was found. But if we can get that person into the academy now, we can get them through the academy, and at least in the field training process by the time that officer retires at the start of January. Otherwise, we're hoping that we can find a spot in an academy, and we won't see that person on the road till very late in the year. This is just going to save us staffing issues, overtime, and we've been struggling with that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? No discussion? Does this require a roll call? All right, roll call vote, please.
Trustee Baum. Trustee Kaminsky. Trustee Hudson. Trustee Myers.
Aye.
Trustee Nyrider. Trustee Jan Miller.
Aye.
Trustee Pieper. President Walter.
Thank you.
Thank you, chief.
Now all new business?
No,
It's been taken care of.
got more.
Any announcements?
I'm tired.
Yeah, sure. Thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you all for watching. Have a good night. Anything to sign?
Yes.